GM, and welcome to the Boonified Experience podcast. I'm your host, Kyle, but really, most people just call me Boona. This is a Web3 podcast where I interview artists, builders, innovators, DeFi wizards, and, of course, GM enthusiasts. The mission here is to highlight trustworthy individuals in the space, share amazing artwork, and build a strong culture as we rewrite the history of IP and entertainment forever. If you're new here and or returning, welcome back and welcome. Thank you so much. I'm glad you're here. If you have not done so already, please go ahead and like and subscribe to this channel. Whether you're on YouTube, Spotify, Apple, whatever platform you're on, it greatly helps accelerate the growth of this podcast. So let's go ahead and get right into it. Our next guest, his name is Jeff, or as on Twitter, if you may know him, I believe is Jihoz, and that's Jihoz. He is one of the co-founders of the legendary Web3 blockchain-based game called Axie Infinity. And if you are new to Web3 and NFTs in general, you definitely want to pay attention to Axie Infinity. Disclaimer, I do not own any Axie Infinities. I'm not paid or sponsored to say this. However, this game it is estimated that it has grossed over 1.65 billion in revenue, and a good chunk of that, almost half of it, coming from 2021. They're on pace to be at $1 billion for this year alone, which is absolutely bonkers. We chat everything from Jeff's intro to these types of games, a lot of his history as a kid, what got him into these types of video games as a kid, and a lot of his transition from Web 2 to Web 3, and also what the future of Web 3 holds, especially when it comes to blockchain-based gaming, blockchain in general, NFTs, etc. Y'all, I'm so excited for y'all to listen to this. It is an absolute treat to have Jeff come on, and let's go ahead and get started with the show. Allow you the opportunity to give a brief intro. Just to give you some concept, my audience, there's a lot of people that are following that are Web3, evangelists, or they participate in it, and then there's a lot of people that are still on the fence. So just do kind of like a high level quick introduction, like who are you, what do you do, man?
Yeah, sure. So I'm Jiho. I'm a co-founder of Axie Infinity and Sky Mavis. I'm a lifelong gamer, a lifelong collector. I grew up collecting insects and fossils with my father. I grew up playing games like StarCraft, Diablo, World of Warcraft. I got sent away actually to boarding school because I was playing so much WoW. With Axie, I do a lot of the community and economy related stuff. For those of you that aren't familiar with Axie, Axie is a game that was designed to introduce the world to crypto and blockchain. It's kind of similar to games you might have grown up playing. Like there are these digital pets. They're cute. You can battle them. You can collect them. You can even breed them. Axie is different from a traditional game in that, right? Like all of the game assets and items and resources come with digital property rights, meaning that you can sell them to anyone, anywhere in the world. And there are these free markets attached to the game.
Gotcha, man. And, I feel like a dunce for doing this, but I realized that, I called you John before. That's your name, so I apologize for that, man. Yeah, dude. I enjoy that, man. So Axie was something that, for someone like me, I joined the Web3 community probably around March. February, March is really around when I started getting curious, and this was something that kept popping onto my radar. And as I was learning this, just for your context, I got onboarded, through Beeple's, massive sale, was something that literally it's what sparked my curiosity, and diving down the rabbit hole, started looking at crypto art, started looking at all these other things. And, in the back of my mind, I said, man, what would gaming in NFTs and this new wild concept look like? What would that be? And then this came on my, Axie Infinity came on my radar. I said, this is fascinating. And I almost kicked myself for not getting involved when I actually had the Ethereum, but I just didn't really quite understand it, at the time, for the time being. And I think it's one of the blessings and curses about Web3 is that it's almost like shiny object syndrome. There's so many different like cool things happening. Like what do I even focus my attention on? Because there's only so many hours during the day. So wanna go a little bit further back. Like when it came to like starting Axie, like when was Axie officially started? And like what was like the process like finding some of the people that you're involved with today, or like the founding team, if you will.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
So Axie started in 2017. So there are two guys that I think you can kind of, call the original founders of Axie Infinity, Trung and Masamune. And so I actually had met Trung through the CryptoKitties community. So a lot of the early Axie players, community members, are from the Axie, or from the CryptoKitties community. I found out about Axie, in March of 2018, and I came in as a community member. I bought 3 Axies. And,
oh no shit! Okay.
I thought it was super cute, combination of like NFT collectible with also this utility aspect where you could actually use it to play in a game. It really made a lot of sense to me. So but I found it as a community member. I bought 3 Axies and I started to ask, okay, what do we do now? Like, how do we get to the next step? So that's how I found out about Axie, right? I think, and so it's always been a project where community members are coming in and materially contributing to the future direction of the project.
That's awesome, man. I mean, and so you went from, you had, that's a really cool story that I had no idea. So you started as a community member. I mean, and you bought a couple Axies, like, contributed, worked your way up. Like, when did it become like less of like I just want to play Axie, of like, man, I want to be a founder. I want to play a more important role, if you will.
Sure. It was definitely a gradual process, I think. Yeah. But, within 2 months of having found out about Axie, I had given my dog away to my parents and moved to Vietnam. so it was kind of like, it was a gradual process, but also I think I got like pretty into it really quickly. So yeah, I mean, I think that's what happens with these Web3 rabbit holes. And I think Axie is, the largest of these rabbit holes, where I thought that it was a really special opportunity. I was someone who grew up trying to make money in games and was always running into issues and getting banned and having TOS violations. And it was just like, okay, what if there was a game that actually encouraged the player-owned economy, and instead of trying to set up all these roadblocks, actively developed with this intent. I thought it was a huge opportunity.
So I mean, was that what was like playing Axie? What was that like the primary driver for you to like move to Vietnam? Or like, was it just like, was that separate?
To be with the other two, with the rest of the team, right? So Trung and
Masamune
that I was talking about earlier, they're Vietnamese.
Yeah. Got it. Okay, that makes a lot of sense. I said that there's no way that was like coincidence. I wanted to clarify that. Mm-hmm. And I mean, so you went from community member, now you're founder. Like, I mean, so it took. Like I've seen, only from what I've seen and some of the charts I've looked at, like it looks like a lot of the most like explosive growth from Axie came really this year, in 2021. So when it comes to like, when it came to the years prior to that, like you had it like 2017, that was also around the time when CryptoPunks were free. There wasn't really any hype around it. But kind of tell me, like, and I asked this question because right now it's very easy, at least for someone like me who just discovered about Web3 and NFTs, like to get into it, because there's so much attention, there's so much volume being traded, and just compared to the amount of wallets, it's unbelievable the dollar signs that are flowing through the system. But in 2017, that obviously wasn't the case, So I guess I'm curious, like, what kept you like, what were some of the small, like, wins that, like, kept the team moving forward, like, when there wasn't as much attention as there was today, if that makes sense?
I think what we saw that was very special were community members stepping up and doing amazing things. And even when Axie was small, we had this very passionate, very loyal, very engaged and creative community that was doing amazing things. And right, so we thought, okay, if community members are doing these things, right, getting tattoos, making music videos, basically dedicating their lives and spending hours per day just hanging out, chatting, giving feedback, giving ideas. If people are disengaged when the community is this small, what would happen if we got to this milestone? So I think that's what gave us hope, and it was also that we knew that once we have battles, right? Once we have scalable infrastructure, and it's still like that, right? It's still so hard to get in. Right? So we're always kind of like, okay, we have this next development goal that will unlock this, right? Unlock these types of new users. And we're still in that stage where, right, we're working on Battles V2, and that will also allow anyone to try Axie, right? Try a demo or with free starter Axies. Do you think that that's going to unlock huge amounts of growth as well?
Okay. No, all good. Yeah. Gotcha. All good?
Yeah. Can you still see me? Sorry.
Yeah. No, you're good.
My
you're good.
entire computer. Okay.
Gotcha. Gotcha, man. So, no, that's...
Okay.
All good?
Good, yeah.
Cool. So, I mean, I think, so where we're at was like, just, you're consistent, like, looking at, like, some of the Battle 2.0s, or like looking for newer ways to onboard. When it comes to, so from my lens, the way I see esport, I want to shift directions a little bit to esports, is, the current model with esports, it doesn't really look that sustainable from the outside looking in. Now, I'm not in the financial meetings. I'm not in, a lot of like the inner workings of like what happens. And there's very little about esports that's actually like shared, knowledge, or that's like public knowledge when it comes to any sort of deals. Like, I think the biggest deal that I recognized was TSM's, or, FTX, with the naming rights for TSM. But the problem that I see is that esports is not sustainable. Like, there's not really a sustainable model. Like, you have sponsorship revenue, which is dependent upon wins. You have merch, like, cool. You have content, but all of those you could argue are very volatile, and there's not much consistency to it. And so, do you see, like, when it comes to like Web3 gaming and esports, do you see games like Axie like changing that model and flipping it on its head? Or I guess I want to get some of your thoughts about like what you envision, I guess the next generation of esports to look like with Web3 technology.
So I think what we're doing with Axie is we're democratizing esports, and we're creating a system where, right, it's not, the earning is not constrained to the top 0.1%. And right, so we've created this system where there are right, collectors, whales, speculators who, right, they're trading their capital for, right, power, respect, and time within our economy. Traditionally, when people want to spend for those reasons, that's all going to the game developer. But we've basically created a system where when people are spending, within the ecosystem, that is going to other members of the ecosystem. So basically it's creating a system where esports, right, and this ability to sustain yourself by playing a game, it's being subsidized by spenders and consumers, rather than, right, just solely focusing on advertising or merch and things like that. So this is a different model. It's a model where we as the game developers are basically sharing more of the fruits of the ecosystem with our community. We think that it's also a good business decision, because you basically get a game that's much larger than it would be if you have a more closed economy. So that this is the way that we're thinking about it. We also, even within Axie, right, we do have tournaments, and we do have sponsors. But the cool thing is too, we're the primary sponsor, right, where we're giving away access tokens. Basically, access tokens are, right, kind of like little pieces of our ecosystem. They're backed by right, the fees generated by the in-game economy. So it's a new model, and it's quite experimental, but we think that it'll work. And we're I believe sponsoring around 50 tournaments over the next couple of months, and the esports scene is definitely growing in Axie, but it's still definitely early days.
That's insane to me, because I look at, I mean, there's a lot of publishers that do very little of that. Like, you'll see publishers, maybe they'll comp like plane tickets for, for a certain X percentage of the teams, or they'll comp certain parts of, the travel for these events, and they'll put up the events, but not actually fully funding, some of these teams, or sponsoring them in a big way. And I think that's massive. Now, question, because we have, like, one thing I have noticed, it's been very odd to me, but I'm starting to learn more as I surf Twitter a little bit more, is a lot of AAA game devs have this really strong backlash against Web3. Like, there is, like, it's almost like they're just as passionate against it as, I would say, a lot, like, everyone in my, I guess, Twitter sphere is passionate for Web3. Like, how do you see, like, a new era of, like, game developers playing with the current way it is? I mean, this just seems like a massive undertaking.
Sure. I think that it depends on trailblazers like Sky Mavis to show the path forward, to show the playbook. Yep. There will always be some people, I think, that are afraid of new technologies, but I think there are some people, I think a healthy skepticism is important. I'm skeptical of a lot of NFT projects and a lot of NFT games that are, coming out. But I think, right, it's a question around education and having fun ways for people to go down the rabbit hole. That's in essence what we're building with Axie, is a gamified rabbit hole into the world of Web3, because we understand that we didn't understand Web3 until we started actually breeding CryptoKitties, right? And feeling that sense of ownership and seeing what a community-powered game actually looked like. So, I think that we need to show the path forward. We need to do a better job also educating. But I also think that it's a new way of building games, and I think it can be threatening to people from the traditional path. I think that also there are some people who, right, they're kind of like purists, and that they think that games should only be about fun for the player.
Right.
Right. But I guess, right, there's obviously, right, like, these developers are making a lot of money from these audiences, right? So I think for us, our angle is that, right, like who's to say that we're the only ones creating value in the network that should be rewarded with monetary value, and that the players that are creating value, they should only be rewarded with these types of value, right? Capital is just one form of value. There are many forms of value, right? And I think it's, to us, we just see it as another carrot that we can use in our toolbook.
Yeah, I mean, because I'll tell you, Halo recently just changed it for me, because it just released and I bought the battle pass. But since I came in here, I never bought a weapon skin for a video. I'm a first person shooter guy, so I enjoyed Call of Duty. I grew up with Call of Duty, grew up with Halo, grew up with, I started playing Valorant. And I started spending all this money on Valorant skins, and I probably spent close to $1,000. But it dawned on me in this process that, like, I actually don't own these assets. Like, I paid all this money for the right to use them, but I can't take them anywhere with me. And as a gamer like that, like, it started introducing a lot of new trains of thoughts. I said, well, like, because I see what Axie's doing, and to it's got its own model, But then I look at first person shooter games. I said, what does NFTs look like, or what does Web3 look like when it comes to these massive like behemoth game publishers? Like, can they adapt? How do they adapt? Like what needs to be undone, what needs to be implemented for them to actually do it. And I'll tell you, like, where I struggle a lot with NFTs, and I wanted to get your take on this, is that there's a culture of Web3 that I really enjoy, that like people are accountable for their actions. It's this like self-custody culture over like I'm going to rely on someone else to do something for me and also take accountability when something messes up. I struggle with like understanding like when and how to educate people. It's like, how much do I like dangle the carrot for them to go down the rabbit hole versus how much do I like kind of like coddle them as they're entering towards the rabbit hole? You know what I mean? Because I just don't want to tell people all the answers. I want them to find their own way, because I believe genuinely that they're going to find their own niche because they found ways to go down the rabbit hole that were meaningful to them,
Sure. I think when I talk to people that are interested in learning, I try to think of myself as an aggregator of the correct information, or at least the information that I found to be useful to myself. So right, because there's a lot of misinformation out there around crypto and Web3 if you're just learning through Google searches. So oftentimes I see myself as an aggregator where I'm like, hey, this was helpful around my thinking around this. And so recommending articles, blogs, YouTubers, things like that. But I also think that this is why Axie is so powerful, is that by playing Axie Infinity, you learn how to, right? If you can just sell someone on, deciding to go down this path of becoming an Axie player, you then are actually also, right, going to teach them how to download a digital wallet, acquire cryptocurrency, even use a decentralized exchange, provide liquidity, learn about impermanent loss. What is a governance token?
Right.
So I think that's also why like Axie is powerful, is that it itself is a school for crypto.
Gotcha. It's a pretty fun way to learn, in my opinion. That's a great solution. Because I've noticed even with myself, it's just like I stopped saying like NFTs or like some of the common like threatening buzzwords, and I just start like talking about ways that it benefits, like some of the examples that it can actually do, or some real life tangible things that are actually meaningful to people.
Focus on benefits, right? This is really important for founders, right? When you're talking about your product, we need to talk about what are the benefits of Web3, what are the benefits of our products. Those are the ways that people are going to get hooked and figure out like, okay, this is something that I need to go and get into, right? Like people who are saying, oh, like the friction, it was too difficult. These are people that are not interested, if that makes sense. Like you need to catch their interest and their attention before you ask them to do all these crazy things. That's also why Axie is so powerful, in my opinion, because people read these headlines, right? It's like, people are making money playing a game. This is a dream, right? This is a dream come true. It's like every kid proving their mother wrong. So it has that mimetic aspect. Yeah.
Absolutely. And I mean, and you touched on a really good point of like, we're a very headline driven culture, like, and we're in this thing where like I'm guilty of it myself until I tripped down this rabbit hole and I came down Web3. Like I was one of the people who just, if it was of mild interest, I would just read the headline and I'd keep it moving, but this has been the one thing that's actually forced me to like actually read. And I think that is an incredibly important thing of people like it. It's weird. It's like people who are, I think you hit the nail on the head with like grabbing their attention and then you can explain it. Because in the beginning, I was like an evangelist thumping everyone on the head with like this like digital Bible that was just like, you need to figure this out and you need to understand this, but telling people they need to do something is just going to make them run the opposite way, like, yeah. Sorry, I think it cut out there for just a second. But yeah, I think that's a great way to do that. So when it comes to like, this is something that was really fascinating. So as of right now, I know your Discord has like reached the max capacity, which is absolutely fascinating. Not many people have been able to achieve that. So Discord's currently closed off. And what I also learned from a Kevin Rose podcast, where he was interviewing one of the people from, it was I can't remember what it was called, but it was from some sort of guild where they were literally loaning out Axies to onboard new players. Could you elaborate a little bit more on that for like people that maybe they were like wanting to invest, but they don't really have the money to invest 500, to however much it is now, of however many Ethereum it takes to get involved just as a starter pack. Like, can you just elaborate on that a little bit more? Because I found that was like a really fascinating way to onboard people into this.
So there is a system called the scholarship system where people who cannot afford to play Axie Infinity, because Axies are kind of $100+ now each, and you need 3 of them. So Axies are basically expensive. You need Axies to play.
Right.
Why are they expensive? Well, it comes down to the fact that you can actually earn tokens of real value with them. So Axies became expensive, and then so the people that could actually be helped by this game were being priced out. And then these guilds, in many cases, kind of rose to the occasion where they started to accumulate Axies and then lend them out to people who couldn't afford them. And these, the scholar and the guild would agree to a it's kind of like an income sharing agreement where basically the guild would earn a percentage of the tokens earned by the scholar while using those Axies. So it was amazing. It came from the community. It wasn't something that we necessarily anticipated, but it was a pretty good solution to the issue of accessibility. I'll also say that one of the issues with this is that there's still people who are interested in Axie but aren't sure that they want to go commit to being someone's kind of scholar, or it's kind of like being almost like an employee or something. So that's a little bit intense for some people. There are a lot of people who they want to try the game and see if it's fun before they even buy their own team. So we're also working on an upgraded battle system where anyone will be able to try the game with 3 free starter Axies. They might not be able to earn, but they'll kind of be able to fall in love with the universe, the mechanics, before they make any economic decisions. Right now, if you want a team of Axies and you have the $400+ or whatever, you have to figure out okay, what team do I want to buy, and then you have to kind of watch YouTube, learn the mechanics of the game, right? See what people are using in the meta before you make any decisions.
Right.
So there are a lot of barriers, but I think that's awesome because we have 2.8 million players. Even with all these barriers, what will happen when they're progressively lowered?
Dude, and I can't remember what country it was, but I know it's one of the main primary sources of income for an entire country.
Yeah, especially in the Philippines. It's gotten quite large. So that we have hundreds of thousands of players in the Philippines, if not millions.
That's insane. That's actually insane. And so I'm almost curious about what that does. If a lot of the people that are normally in traditional labor in the Philippines are now playing a video game and making a way healthier living, what that actually does to the Philippines economy. Are they struggling for workers? Are they raising wages? Are they doing this? Because it scratches on a lot larger of a problem, or not, I guess not larger of a problem, but just a larger, I guess, topic of what does that actually do to an entire country's impact? And I just imagine that y'all didn't have that in mind when you started this either.
Well, I think a lot of the people who are being helped by this, they're unemployed or underemployed. And
Gotcha.
I think, initially, we're dealing with automation and the consequences of automation, where robots are coming for the jobs and destroying a lot of jobs, and a lot of physical jobs are being destroyed through the pandemic and never returning. So I think Axie is helping the people who have basically been automated away from labor. So I think it's an answer to what does the future of work look like
Yeah.
in a kind of a post-industrial society.
How about that? Yeah. I mean that. Yeah, because it's. I've also had that. I've also had that curiosity of like, what is this like? What does that mean? Because I know even here in the States, like you're seeing a lot of the same things. Like, people got priced out, especially the food industry is really tough. A lot of jobs you really found what was relevant, what was irrelevant. For a lot of corporate workers, you know, like myself, it was a very good benefit. Like there was a lot of things that came to the corporate environment with a lot more flexibility, working remotely. But there's an entire subset of the country that felt the burn a lot deeper or a lot more than we did. So I find that really insane because I also see that even with like fast food restaurants, like they can't hardly hire anybody. You know, like they can't, you know, in this post-COVID, you know, system, like they can't hire enough people because they're making more money, you know, not working there than they were, you know, with a regular corporate job. And I just find that incredibly fascinating. So wanted to switch gears a little bit as well. Like, you know, what do you know, I guess I want to talk about some like personal interest of yours. Like what, I know you said you were skeptical of some NFT projects. Like what is something that like you're looking into or like some things that like you're like are a big favorite of yours, you know, whether it's gaming, whether it's PFPs, whether it's just art in general. I always like to get a little bit of the collector side of people on here.
Yeah. And, you know, so I'm super excited about social coordination tools. So like now we have finally we have adoption, where we actually have large communities. And then it's like, okay, how do we make sure that we're identifying people who want to contribute and creating ways to scientifically reward them? How do we maintain a tight-knit culture and community when we have millions of people rather than tens of thousands? It's kind of easy to have a tight-knit community when there are, you know, a couple hundred people.
Right.
But yeah, it's much easier.
Yeah.
And right, how do you scale while also remaining special? So that might not be necessarily, yeah. So I'm excited about products that solve things like that. Like we just did a Collabland integration within the Axie Discord. And this is basically allows people to claim a role on Discord based on the tokens that they're holding in their wallet. So for me, that's something like super, super cool. Yeah, you know, I'm in terms of the rest of crypto, like, I mean, I don't have too much time to look at other stuff, and I'm wary of recommending other projects in case people kind of like care a lot about what I say. But you know, I don't know. I'm you know, I'm on the lookout. I've been investing and looking at like Axie guilds, for example, and metaverse guilds. That's been really cool. And I'm still thinking about like, what is the future? What does the next generation of NFT games look like? What will they be successful? Will they be coming next year? Or will they be coming in 2 or 3 years or even further out? So.
Yeah, I mean, you bring up a good point because like it's for people who've never built a game and there's all these NFT, you know, PFP projects launching, and you're just like, yeah, we're gonna have this game. It's gonna be a part of this roadmap, and you know, like we both know that like you probably know a lot more than me, but you know, I at least see from the outside that like making a game is really, really tough. Like it is one of the hardest, and it's one of the hardest and riskiest things to do. You know, it's a very appreciated art form, but it takes a lot of risk and a lot of know-how and a lot of grit to like figure that out. So I'm, you know, unless like a game is like has a huge market cap and there's like all these active users onboarding, it's hard for me to really get down with like, what does Web3 games look like? Because I know out of all the projects, like probably 99% of these people that are going to be making a game as part of their PFP project are going to fail, because they've never built a game before, you know, and some of them may just get really lucky and things may just click and they may have the technical know-how or know the right people to bring on board as the project grows. You know, but I guess when it comes to the different ecosystems, this is really what I wanted to touch on. You have Axie, which is built on Ethereum. Now, I've been seeing a lot of games with that are being built on like Unreal Engine being powered on the Solana blockchain. Like, is there like I wanted to, because we're talking about like the future of like Web3 gaming. What is your thoughts on like some of the Solana blockchain gaming? Like, because I've been very curious about that, but I haven't really had enough time to, I guess, go deep down the rabbit hole. But it seems like both of them can coexist. But what's your overall vibe on that?
Yeah, I think they have a lot to prove.
Yeah.
I'm almost tempted to wait for the next bear market before I start to figure out like, who I think of the next generation of games are gonna do well. So it's like I'm almost tempted to just wait and wait for the bear market. Hopefully it comes. Hopefully, right. I'm not going to predict one. But I also don't need to necessarily have. I'm not forced to invest or have an opinion on any of them. So I might say that right now it's too difficult to know because it's a different market environment where people are kind of. It's just too easy right now, and historically, that's not necessarily been a good time to make concentrated bets or opinions on stuff. So, I'll also say, so with Axie, right? With Ronin, so we have built our own sidechain scaling solution called Ronin. So it's a NFT scaling solution for Ethereum. We built it specifically for Axie. We also want to onboard other games. Other IP onto Ronin. It's quite difficult to figure out, even right now.
Yeah, okay.
It's difficult to figure out, who's for real, who's going to keep building during rough times, during tough times. So
that's awesome. So like you're wanting to so it's a sidechain that you're wanting to onboard more IP. Would it be under the Axie umbrella? Would it be like would you basically be bringing on a whole nother just group of developers to build that, and what would be what would the relationship be like with Axie, if you can share?
I mean, I think there's potential to bring developers who will build on top of Axie and create additional utility through new experiences. And I think there's also there's a chance for us to become the Nintendo, or even the Epic Games, of this system of NFTs, where we bring in other IP and act as a distribution channel for them.
Gotcha. I guess so. It's great to see that Epic. I know I was at least a little bit curious about NFTs and Web3. I know I've seen they haven't made an official stance, but I know their CEO is he has some healthy skepticism, and he's been on board, but he also has some very big concerns. When it comes to being a distribution network, how would the Web3 version of a distribution platform be different from Steam or Epic right now?
Sure. So in order to make an NFT game, there's a lot of stuff that's required, right? You need a scalable blockchain, wallet, marketplace, right? There's all this plumbing and infrastructure. So we basically, and then there's also the community aspect. So we believe that Ronin will be the number one place to launch a game, because you get all the stuff that we had to build for Axie. You get that, right? And that it works because it's working for Axie, whereas nothing else is really battle tested. Right? Even we have our own Katana. We have our own decentralized exchange now, right? So it's we built all this stuff because we figured out what we needed for Axie and then built it out. We believe that these components are going to be needed for all other NFT games as well. So that's the idea is to have, and then also you get access to our community, which is the largest. It's larger than anything else out there. So.
Yeah, it's insane. And no, that sounds like you hit the nail on the head there. That's awesome, man. Well, wanted to, outside of some of the stuff that we had discussed, what is some of the and I asked this question, it's almost like a loaded question, but I was actually listening to a podcast, and they were talking about when the Mac was like first invented. It was like their idea of the future was literally like people coding recipes or like entering like cookbook recipes into their Macintosh, and that was like the most innovative thing at the time that they could think of. I say that with the context of like, we haven't really been able to discover what Web3 really has to offer. I feel like we're seeing some of the benefits. It's solving some immediate pains, a lot of immediate problems. But I want to get a little bit into imagination land. But, what do you see as far as like Axie in like the next 10 years? Like, where would you want to see that? And I know in crypto, that's basically like 100 years. So
definitely. I think the eventual implications of this is that if you can create deep social economic relationships with anyone anywhere in the world, you start to see yourself as part of this community, right? This community also has culture and entertainment built into it. You start to have all the building blocks of a real nation, right? So we often call it Axie a digital nation. Governments are now starting to reach out to us, and then even politicians are starting to get interested. So it's almost right, like we have our own. We're kind of almost. I think in the future we have this potential where we may be signing treaties with governments. We may be acquiring land in the physical world. Governments may be even begging us to buy land in the physical world from them as they go bankrupt from sovereign debt crises, which can be brewing. So I think that this is something that can become far more than a game. This is a community that can become quite powerful in the real world.
Yeah, I mean that's a thought, but it's also like a fear of like. It's also a fear, like a strange fear that I've had is like when it comes to economic crises, like of no supply caps, just consistently printing money, never solving the actual debt problem. What would actually, it's almost a terrifying, it's like I'm excited, but also equally terrified at that thought, because it's a very large scale of like, wow, like this is what we've depended on our entire life. But when it comes to the future of like Web3, like say that were to happen, say that like economic catastrophe happened globally when it came to our current dollar system or our current currency. I see Axie being a main player. What other players do you see that is it just like a decentralized network of all of this cryptocurrency? Is that like the only currency, or are there other projects like yours or other, I guess, communities like yours that play an important role in sustaining that? Because like it's like, okay, where's the sustainability when that happens?
Yeah, so what we're seeing, right, is we're seeing people losing trust in public, large institutions, large centralized institutions. So that can be government. That also means Facebook, Apple, Netflix, Google, Amazon, right? People are losing trust in these large centralized institutions. And this creates a need for different types of communities and different types of support structures and networks. Right. And it can be difficult. It's going to be a shaky transition. It's kind of like Joseph Schumpeter's creative destruction.
Yeah.
But this is, I think it's just a path that I see as almost inevitable. And, that's, I used to be someone who wanted to be, I wanted to become a politician or a central banker to try and fix the system. Right. And then I realized that I was not going to be able to do that. And then I started figuring out what is the next move. And I think people are throughout the world having this realization, and they will be having this realization over the next 10 years. But what I will say is that hopefully, and I think, right, like these decentralized communities, these Web3 communities, I think they offer an alternative, right? A system of structure and support, even in a world where the things that we are traditionally relying on are breaking down. And I think it's potentially, right, something that means that even if those things kind of collapse, we'll still have some form of stability.
Gotcha. Yeah, because when you say something like that, it makes me wonder, like, what is, because like the irony of Web3 is funny because like we're building the plane as we're flying it, but yet we're building it, but our entire community is on Twitter. Like everything is still all of these like we're on I use an iPhone. I have AirPods. I have all of these are created from central companies, and so I guess it just begs the question of like, what does that look like in Web3? And I haven't even really thought of that. It's just something that when you mentioned it, it popped into my head of what does a bottoms up Amazon look like, or a bottoms up Apple look like? Is that even going to happen in a time where we're alive? You know what I mean?
It's true. I think the low hanging fruit is around industries where there are very strong communities and there are large kind of middlemen that are extracting huge fees. So I think that's why it's like gaming, I think fits that requirement quite well, and music fits that requirement quite well. Like hardware and stuff like that. It's like it's maybe a little bit further off.
Yeah. Because I still look at, I've constantly had the thought of like, do I want a fully decentralized world? It's like, do I want everything to, it's like, because there is some central like benefits that like I really do enjoy, like, and it's like, maybe, like, I guess for my personal opinion, like maybe I don't really want to push for a fully, I don't know if I want that, because that is terrifying when we get to enjoy, there's a lot of cool things that are being created by great companies, and not, but I would agree with you for the most part, it is a very large level of distrust in the way decisions are made. That's interesting. I just thought of that because so games, music, and just honestly artists in general, we've been seeing this massive like wave of, wow, artists are now getting paid. And they get to make their work once and they could continually make money off that work for the rest of their life. I think that's a fascinating bridge that we've really crossed here, but want to start wrapping things up. I know we had about a 30-minute block and we've gone over. So Jeff, I do want to thank you for coming on, man. And when it comes to, I always like to give the spotlight to you one more time at the end. If there's any sort of advice for someone that's coming into Axie, wanting to build their own game, any sort of like nugget that like you've learned when you created this in 2017 that you'd like to share?
I think that this is a space where you need a high level of conviction and you need to have really good habits, where we're not going to know. You can't really tell from initially just finding a project whether it's going to do well, or you can't even know that about yourself.
Right.
But I think that what one thing that we need more of in Web3 is we need people with like amazing habits who just will show up day after day, regardless of market conditions. I think that's what Axie is a testament to that, where we built, it was an overnight success, 4 years in the making.
That's right.
So yeah, I think like what I'll say is right now it's like the market conditions recently have been so good that we forget the necessity to show up every day and to be consistent, and that good things take a really long time to marinate. So
yeah, I love that. And to me, it's the hardest transition from Web 2 to Web 3, because Web 2 we're so polished and it's mature and things are just, a lot of things have happened just like instantaneously, and people have found a lot of like viral success or a lot of the meme culture. And while that's great, it just destroys like human, like number one, like human innovation, and it destroys like a lot of like personal growth that needs to be had before you can really achieve some of these levels. But again, I want to thank you for coming on. If you want people to follow you, where's the best place if they want to get in contact with you, get in contact with some of your team? What's the best place really to find you?
Yeah, so you can find me on Twitter at Jihoz_Axie. It's like JIHOZ_Axie. Yeah, come to the Axie Discord. It's discord.gg/Axie. We prune it from time to time. So
Gotcha.
There may be slots open. Yeah. there's a lot of there are a lot of awesome YouTubers, Axie YouTubers, and content creators, both and Twitch streamers. I think that's one of the awesome things about Axie is there's all this kind of content out there. So if you want to learn more, they do a pretty good job.
Awesome, man. Well, hey, again, it's been a pleasure having you on. I'll let you get back to it and hopefully let you get some rest, man.
All right. Thanks, man. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely.